The 2022 Toyota Gazoo Racing 86, the GR86 rear drive, naturally aspirated, manual, and a standard mechanical limited slip differential, all for $30,000 for the premium and just under $28,000 for the base. How do they do it?
Clearly, when they built this car, they had one thing in mind, and that was driving dynamics, specifically on curvy roads, whether that be canyon carving, autocross, or at the track. You know, they went transmission, chassis, powertrain, throw some seats in it, wrap it in a pretty package. That's how I imagine that all went. You know, even in the premium trim, it's a little bit lacking, but it does keep the cost down. Now, that's not to be confused with the premium trim in the BRZ version of this car, because the BRZ, the premium is the base. Here in the GR86, the premium is actually the upper trim. We'll get into what the differences are as we go here. But we have a new powertrain for this year. We have an FA24 in the WRX I was in a couple weeks ago. That one had an FA24, but that one was turbocharged. It was a 2.4 liter boxer engine, a 4-cylinder. And this one is naturally aspirated. This one actually uses Toyota's D4S system. There's both direct and port injected. What does that translate to? It translates to 184 pound-feet of torque at 3,700 RPM. That's a lot lower than last year, a lot lower in the tack to get to your peak torque numbers. We also have less dip. There's still a tiny bit of dip, but a lot less than there was in the last generation. So the raised torque number, the fact that it hits earlier, the fact that there's less dip, definitely a big improvement. We also have 228 horsepower. That hits up at 7,000 RPM. Nice big climb all the way up to 7,000. Now at the bottom of the tack, a little bit lacking. Nice short gears, but if you're going light to light, it's probably going to feel like a little bit of a chore. But other than that, when you're in your power band, power is readily available. Not too much worry about the dip. No turbo lag, anything like that. The power delivery feels very, very good. And it may not seem like a lot of power, but remember, this is only a 2,800 pound car, which is about the same weight as last year. For reference, that's about 400 pounds more than a Miata. Nothing's really touching a Miata at this point in terms of weight, but it's also about 400 pounds lighter than something like a Supra, even though a Supra only has 2 seats and this one has 4. We do have a 6-speed manual here. This one has the collar for reverse up and to the left in Toyota's up left position. Subaru, you would expect a back right, but this one is using Toyota's. They both use a collar, so not unexpected there that we have a collar to get into reverse. The gears, the track is nice and tight, definitely nice and easy to shift and very confident. And the gears are very short, you can wring it out. You've got the active sound control pumping that boxer engine sound into the cabin. Not exactly my favorite. I would probably try to disable that active sound control if there's any way to. It just doesn't sound awesome. I guess it helps with shifting. This tack certainly isn't my favorite for shifting. You know, RIP analog gauges. But the nice short gearing and the 7500 redline are definitely wonderful for canyon carving. Now, in terms of clutch feel, this one is a little bit on the heavier side. Not super heavy, but on the heavier side for sure. Not like all these new sport compacts that have super light clutches. A lot heavier than a Miata. A Miata is super light, still communicative, super forgiving. This one is a lot less forgiving, a lot more weight to it, but once you get used to it, it feels pretty good. Bite point is all the way near the top, like all Subarus pretty much. Now, of course, lightweight, rear drive, low center of gravity, limited slip differential, that all translates to very good handling. And this one handles very, very well in the corners. It's super, super confident, especially since we're in the premium trim. We're on these 18s, but the 18s are wrapped in Michelin Pilot Sport 4 Summers, so they are nice and sticky. If you're in the base trim, you're on 17s with Primacy Summers, not quite as sticky, a little bit easier to get the back loose in that one from what I've heard. In this one, you really have to to be trying to get the back wheels loose. We do have track mode right here to turn traction control off and all of that. And I'll also update your TAC display here, but very, very confident in the corners. And the steering is, the steering has been updated for this year. It's very light. I don't really remember the first generation being quite this light, but is very direct, very sharp. No real complaints about the steering at all. As far as ride quality goes, you know, we're on big 18s. The suspension setup is set up for, you know, track driving, spirited driving, corners. So it's pretty stiff in here. It's probably actually not quite as stiff as the Civic Si. I remember that one being especially stiff. But this one is not really your cruiser here, your highway cruiser. But that stiff suspension does definitely help in those corners. But I don't know that I would want to do my daily commute in this for extended periods of time or go on road trips or anything like that. Plus the fuel economy is not really great for that anyway. And we're sitting around 3,500 RPM if you're on the highway going 70, 75. Fuel economy between 20 and 27. Not exactly meant for that kind of driving. We're low to the ground. We're about 5.1 inches off the ground, which is actually a little higher than I expected because that's actually the same as the GTI. I thought that was a little surprising, but we're not having any issues with scraping in terms of scraping on the driveway, scraping on speed bumps, anything like that. No problems there, at least at the stock height. If you lower it, you're on your own. As far as safety features goes, you know, Subaru likes to save their safety features for the automatic. Not super surprising. We don't have a whole lot of features here, like the things like lane keep assist, or lane departure warning, your pre-collision braking, your adaptive cruise. You can't get those unless you get the automatic. Here, since we're in the premium trim, at least we do get blind spot monitoring, which is super helpful in a sports car that doesn't have great visibility usually. And we have hill hold, which will flash at you here. It's actually a pretty good system. It tells you when it's engaged. It's pretty obvious that it's engaged, and it holds pretty well, and it lets go as soon as you need it to let go. Now, with that blind spot monitoring I mentioned, actually we do have pretty decent visibility for a sports car, especially since it's not a convertible, it's not a target top, anything like that, no removable top of any kind. We don't have those big beefy pillars you'll see in like a Boxster or a Corvette or a Miata. So the visibility, like, you don't have quite as big of a blind spot. Plus, since it's a four-seater, we've got these nice long doors with a nice big window, so that helps too. The blind spot really isn't too bad in this one. Plus, it means that the back window can be a little bit wider, and the visibility out the back is actually pretty good.
As far as the interior goes, we have the ultra suede seats because we're in the upgraded premium trim. These are manually adjustable, as is the steering wheel. No need to add weight for power adjustment. The seats are bolstered aggressively and plenty comfortable, and there's plenty of space for me at 5'7", but I think there's actually enough room if you are a lot taller as well. Plastics abound and are clearly a cost savings measure, and I'm okay with it. The touch points are generally soft, and we've got the suede visor of the gauge cluster for some reason. The cluster is brought to you by the makers of the original Pong. I would have much preferred analog gauges and a small info window for this information on the side, rather than the full digital with a display that's immediately dated. Pushing the track mode button in the center console will disable traction control and give you a slightly different dated display. Infotainment is small and simple. Wired Android Auto and Apple CarPlay for this one. I've had some issues with the connection cutting out and having to reconnect with Android Auto. It does take a minute to connect initially as well, but not too big of a deal. The sound system is fine. No premium audio even in the premium trim, but with the active sound control and lots of road noise, it's a bit tough to hear anyway. Doors have a small pocket, and the center console is slightly different whether you have a manual or the auto. Here in the premium manual trim, we have heated seat switches as well as the track mode button. that I mentioned earlier. Cup holders are borderline unreachable while you're driving, but your hands will be plenty busy steering and shifting anyway. The back seats are tight to say the least. I did manage to get forward facing seats in for the daycare run, and I even managed to get my wife in the passenger seat to head over to Cars and Coffee. No one was comfortable or happy about any of it, so I'd save those back seats for stuff or for people you really don't like. The trunk offers a whopping 6¼ cubic feet of space, so slightly more than a Miata. As for the exterior, we've got a very slick looking sports car here in a color called Track Bread. LED headlights are adaptive if you opt for the premium trim and make for decent visibility at night. Lots of venting in the front grille and around the wheels for the brakes. We're on sticky 18-inch PS4 Summers in the premium trim and 17-inch Primacy Summers in the base. Black mirrors with blind spot monitoring in the premium. No blind spot monitoring if you're in the base. No sunroof or moonroof or removable top of any kind available at all. The ducktail offers some extra downforce for the premium trim. I like that they didn't go with a big wing, but even so, I think that it looks a lot cleaner without it. Overall, an aggressive and sporty looking package with many functional vents and features. If driving comes first and you like a twisty road, this absolutely has to be on your list. The Miata will win out in refinement and ease of use, while this one has a bit more practicality and aggression. And this one does come with a free high performance driving experience, as well as a year of NASA membership, the Autosport one, not the Space one. And a quick side note about the ongoing RTV issues that have blown up online. I don't think they're quite as widespread as it seems in this age of social media, and Toyota has told me they're committed to honoring warranties even on the track as long as it is responsible use. A quick thank you to Toyota for this car, as well as Middletown Toyota here in Middletown, Connecticut, for letting me take out the TRD edition. That is a special edition from 2019 of the last generation, the GT86, so that I could regain my bearings on the last generation before heading into the new generation GR86. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.